Good evening, everyone. We'll call the July 21st, 2022 council meeting to order. I would ask for everyone to rise for the invocation given by Reverend Jefferson Cox of Grace Lutheran Church, and I ask you to remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you for this opportunity to be here tonight. It's the first time back since the passing of my friend and church colleague, Bill Horn, and it's a bittersweet moment for me, but again, I appreciate this opportunity. Let us pray. Gracious God, we ask that you would bless these proceedings with your guidance and with your wisdom as in various ways we seek to answer the age-old question, am I my brother's keeper? Guide this assembly and this council so that the decisions made and the actions taken would answer that question affirmatively with courage, with kindness, and with compassion. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Reverend Cox. We certainly all miss Bill and wished he had been retired and we would run into him here and there. I miss playing golf with him every Saturday. So. Well, right now I miss playing golf, period. Anyway, we're glad everybody could show up tonight. We do have some service awards, so we will start out. First of all, has Carl Allison arrived? Now, Carl is getting two different awards tonight. He was very excited. We were going to call it the Night of Carl, but Carl isn't here. So I don't know what to say about that. We will get his 10 years of service and his Employee of the Month award to him, or we will reschedule. So if I could have from the police department, David Bernay come forward for 20 years of service.
David Bernay, police officer, 20 years of service. David Bernay started his career as a police officer with the Clearwater Police Department on July 15, 2002. He came to Clearwater with prior law enforcement experience from Pinellas County, the Sheriff's Office, and St. Pete Beach Police Department. His experience was immediately respected by senior officers who encouraged him to become a field training officer to pass along his knowledge to our new recruits. Officer Bernay then left the FTO program to join the traffic enforcement team, focusing his strengths on traffic safety and removing impaired drivers from our city streets. He serves as the agency's lead traffic homicide officer, responsible for coordinating traffic homicide investigations. He also uses his teaching skills to instruct new recruits to properly investigate DUI drug driving cases. Officer Bernay is no stranger to being recognized for his efforts. In 2020, he was honored by the Mothers Against Drunk Driving organization for his outstanding dedication to DUI enforcement. Once again, he will receive MADD's Centurion Award for completing over 100 DUI investigations for 2021. He has always worked hard to make sure that everyone gets home safely at the end of the day. David is proud to be a Clearwater police officer, and we congratulate him on his 20 remarkable years of dedicated service to the city.
David, we're proud to have you. Thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Indeed we are. Thank you so much.
Next, for Employee of the Month Award for June 2022, Ramon Perez from the Park and Rec Department.
Ramon Pires, Recreation Center Manager, June 2022, Employee of the Month. Running a large multi-purpose recreation complex is a big job, but running 2 large recreation complexes is an even bigger job, and one that Ramon has taken on without complaint. In mid-January, the recreation manager at North Greenwood Recreation Complex was promoted and transferred to another department with the city. In the months that followed, Ramon voluntarily stepped up to manage operations at North Greenwood while still fulfilling his duties as recreation supervisor at the Ross Norton Recreation Center. In February, Ramon was selected as the new recreation manager for North Greenwood, which meant his double duty would continue until his position at Ross Norton was filled. Ramon has provided leadership at both facilities in the areas of staff and financial management, grant management, completing mid-year evaluations for both sites, assisting with the hiring of aquatic and camp staff, and managing daily operations. Additionally, during this time frame, Ramon has coordinated several high-profile events, including Neighborhoods Day and the grand opening of Belmont Park, Comic-Con at Ross Norton, the pool renovation project at Ross Norton, CRA community meetings at North Greenwood, and the grant-funded after-schools program at both sites. Ramon has taken on the extra work without complaint and with his usual positive attitude. We appreciate Ramon's outstanding work ethic and want to thank him for his outstanding performance.
Thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you.
At this point, I ought to be calling up Carl Alliser, but he's still not here. So we're still going to make it the night of Carl. You can tell him to watch the video. Okay? I'd like to call up Sean Beasley now from Parks and Rec for drowning prevention presentation.
Mayor, Council, Sean Beasley, Parks and Recreation. I am just going to do a short presentation on a program that we implemented with the schools right before school ended this year. July is National Parks and Recreation Month, and I wanted to celebrate it somehow and kind of showcase one of the programs that we do. We do a lot of good stuff in Parks and Rec. One thing that in particular that was a very impactful program I just wanted to share with you guys. I'm going to start out with just a quick 1 minute video.
Here tonight to an in-depth look at child drownings in Florida. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Lauren St. Germain. Wendy is on assignment.
And I'm Jamison Euler. Welcome to ABC Action News here at 6. The numbers are startling. According to state data, there were 98 drownings in Florida last year. That's up from 69 the year before.
And so far this year, there have been 21 in Florida, and it's not even summer yet. And this is something that is preventable.
ABC Action News reporter Sarah Hollenbeck is digging into the numbers tonight and finding out what's being done to prevent drownings this summer.
6-year-old Aaliyah, like many of her classmates, is a little timid around water. But just give her a few seconds and her smile widens. She's one of 350 Clearwater students trading their PE classes for 2 weeks of swim safety.
Swimming lessons are fun.
For some of these kindergarten through 4th graders, this is their first experience in a pool.
Just after 1 week of lessons, the confidence that you see in so many of them, it makes it all worth it.
With every stroke, kick, and jump, they're getting just a little more comfortable.
When I did it, it looked scary, but then I'm getting used to it.
That's just a short clip of the Action News that they did their lead story on. That was conducted at the North Greenwood Rec Center, and that was with Bel Air Elementary School. Their whole entire school came to us, and we provided swim lessons. We also did Skycrest Elementary at the Long Center. We in 2021, 24 kids drowned just in the Tampa Bay area, and this is what we're doing. We did almost 4,000 lessons just between those two schools with the kids. We pride ourselves on swim lessons in the city and all of our rec centers. We did in 2021 almost 15,000 swim lessons in just that 1 year. We did this with a lot of partners. Our lifeguards were the ones that conducted all the swim lessons. The JWB Juvenile Welfare Board paid for our guards to do the swim lessons with Bel Air at North Greenwood. We partnered with the schools. Clearwater for Youth paid for the transportation for the kids to go back and forth to the schools with us. Stingray and Ion provided swim goggles and T-shirts for all the kids as well. One thing that we did is, with me is Eliza DeFont. She's a principal for Skycrest Elementary. Mark Roberson runs the Long Center pool. Jillian Sparks runs the swim lessons out of Long Center, and Thomas Heine does the North Greenwood Rec Center pool as well. These guys took a curriculum and it made it come to life. This wasn't these kids just coming to the rec center and saying, get in the water. Each day was structured, and they learned something different every single day. And they did all that work. What the kids got from the swim lessons, I said, we brought awareness to a lot. As you can see, we reached over 142,000 viewers just on the media. One thing that's really cool that we're looking to do this year is to add the program. The Long Center, we're going to take McMullen Elementary along with Skycrest. Morningside, we're going to do Eisenhower Elementary. North Greenwood is going to take Kings Highway, and Ross Norton's going to keep Bel Air Elementary right next to us. So we're adding 3 more schools, and all we're doing is we're using our guards from the Long Center that would typically be offering morning swim lessons, and we're just not going to have a session here and there. So all those guards will come over to impact so many more kids. And that's it. And then Eliza would just like to say a word, and then that's it.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to thank you for this opportunity to come speak to you today. I just wanted to personally thank the City of Clearwater and CFY and all the partnerships that made this happen for our kids. We did kindergarten through 2nd grade for the 2 weeks of swim lessons. This would not have been possible without their strategic planning. They had everything laid out when they came to me about their goal and their vision. We were just so excited. So with the help of our PE staff, our teachers, and their planning, it ran very smoothly. Of course, you're anticipating some bumps along the road, but it went so well. Visiting the Long Center, the kids' smiles, they were so excited, they were so happy, not just having a good time, but helping save lives for our children. Like the video said, not many students have even had an opportunity to be in a pool, which surprised us. And Skycrest is majority minorities and from low-income families. And when the parents came on the last day, they got to do a little celebration. Parents were even informed of there's affordable swim lessons at the City of Clearwater Long Center, and they didn't even know that. So it provided doors and opportunities for them to learn how to swim, and again, to support the vision of the City of Clearwater in saving lives. So I just wanted to thank you, and my hope is that it continues. Although I'm not at Skycrest Elementary this coming school year, I know that the principal there will accept this, and I hope that it can spread and more students can have this amazing opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you, wherever you move to.
Highland Lakes Elementary.
All right. Well, thank you for the partnership, and we don't know how many lives you all have saved.
We probably never will, but we're doing something.
So thank you all. All right, I would ask if there are any amendments to the minutes of the June 16th, 2020 meeting.
Move approval.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. At this time, I'd like to open it up to citizens. We also have the May 24th special meeting.
Move to approve those minutes of the May 24th special city council meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. This time I'll open it up to citizens to be heard if there are any citizens in the audience that would like to speak. We do ask you to fill out a comment card. You can do it after you speak, but we ask that you do it and you identify yourself for the record, and we respectfully ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Peter Scalia. I'm the Vice President of the Going Home Coalition here in Clearwater, and I just wanted to come in and give a brief update to what's going on with homelessness. I watched the video from Monday's work session, and I just wanted to come in and touch on a couple of things, bring you all up to date on stuff. The organization I represent, for those who don't know it, consists of the following groups. The St. Vincent de Paul Community Kitchen and Resource Center, the Refuge Outreach Church, Joy of the Ministries Gospels, Joy of the Gospel Ministries, Fresh Start Mentoring, HEP, Community Service Foundation, and the Church of Scientology. All together, when we put this organization together back when Bill Horn was here, we wanted to have a high-impact but low-key operation. And I think we've been able to accomplish that. My credentials, for somebody who doesn't know it, almost all of you know me, I'm the Vice President of the Going Home Coalition. I'm a minister of the Bible. I'm a member of the Neighborhood Affordable Housing Advisory Board, and I'm the former Executive Director for St. Vincent de Paul Community Kitchen and Resource Center and their Board of Directors. I want to say right off the bat that after watching that video, at this point in time, for the first time in 15 years that I've been involved in homelessness, I think we have all of the pieces in the box. And it's this administration and this council, all of you, really seem to get it. And I just want to say thank you. I came down here just to say that. Our organization, the things that we have accomplished, we've made a significant impact in less than 36 months in reducing homelessness here in Clearwater. That's our goal. Our goal was not to warehouse people. Our goal was to actually reduce homelessness. To give you an idea of how the organization works, because we're 9 or 8 separate units working together under the umbrella of a 501c3, St. Vincent de Paul has been feeding people here in the community for over 40 years. But 4 years ago, we began the STARS program, and that led us to start taking people, helping them to get off the street. The Joy of Gospel Ministries, their program was to relocate people, which is really the most economic thing we do. We will take a person who is homeless and they want to go home. They want to get back to Seattle, Michigan, wherever, and we get them cleaned up. We get them in some nice, clean clothes. We give them a travel bag with some food in it, and we take them to the bus station or even to the airport. And we put them on the plane, and they go home. Very effective program. The Community Service Foundation, in accordance with Team Village, that's found a lot of homes. We've had to refurbish those homes. One of the ways we did that was, I'm done already? Wow.
Sorry. Thank you for coming out
Thank
tonight,
you.
though.
I'm sorry.
And
All right, thank you very much,
to
guys.
continuing to partner.
All right, thank you.
Come on up.
Thank you, City Council members. My name is Cal Tiger. I have an office at the Ring, and Ms. Tixera has met me before, and I've met you also, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I am an entrepreneur here in Clearwater. I'm a Google Cloud partner as well as an IBM business partner. But my interest is also in dealing with some of the challenges we have here, such as homelessness and sustainability. I've tried to do this thing about sustainability for a long time, but had no success. But I think here is the right place to do it. So I'd like to address the problem of microplastics. I attended a meeting here recently, like a couple of days ago, about microplastics and what it's doing to the ocean. So I've come up with a solution where we incentivize the homeless to collect all these water bottles and so on. And we pay out of our pocket. I have a couple of small investors. And, we think about getting results. Okay? So I would love to present a proposal to you. Maybe you'll discuss this at the next meeting. Would that be of interest?
Be happy to set up a time for you to come into City Hall and meet.
Yes, sir. I'm in the City Hall, actually.
Right.
Okay.
I understand.
Great. Thank you.
So are we.
I'm not dressed up today, but,
That's quite all right. If you could just fill out a comment card.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Kevin Hunsaker, 2939 Sunrise Drive, Clearwater. I was in front of the board a month ago, and the board, we were in a case of a residential church zoning reclassification to institutional. The board agreed with us and denied it as homeowners around the specific religious organization. I'd like to set in place and ask the city council to consider and workshop a text amendment to the institutional uses around the residential and the church expansion. We found when we started to review that, you had better than 25 different classifications under institutional use to the point that they could build a heliport. So one of the council members made comment as well that it is a very wide spectrum and should be considered with discussions with building department and legal, obviously, to maybe put a text amendment in place when you have this type of an issue of religion tied to a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Anyone else for citizens to be heard?
Look, Mr. Dowd, Mr. Hibbert has to look at me now. I'm Mr. Haluba, and I'm going to speak somewhat directly to the new 9 that were sworn in last Monday morning. So if you are, from Texas, North Carolina, Colorado, New York, elsewhere, just keep in mind you're not in Kansas anymore. But I wonder why some of you would travel so far to work for a secondary law enforcement organization like Clearwater Police. Pinellas County Sheriff's Office is primary, and at some point in time you'll be answering to them. As far as the military training that some of you have, I don't consider that a good match to law enforcement. There are people that believe that local police departments, local law enforcement was actually established as a buffer to any military occupation, so it just doesn't fit. So try to put that in the background, so we don't have another event like Michael Leonardo. It just doesn't, it just doesn't fit. It's like hiring a plumber to fly an airplane. One of the things that I hit on quite often is I don't believe that Clearwater Police has a very good record of embracing change. And I don't think hiring someone whose father worked for Clearwater Police is going to enhance that whatsoever. It's just going to be more of the same. Keep in mind, though, that Pinellas County Sheriff Office is hiring.
Your time is up.
Oh, you think so?
Oh, I'm sure we'll see you next meeting. Can't wait.
You have to crack at me when I turn around and walk away, or holler at me from across the room.
You're out of order, sir.
Sir, you're out of order, as usual.
Well, I have to tell everyone here, I'm extremely proud of the Clearwater Police Department, the officers that we have, and the leadership. And I think the reason that people come from all over the country to work here is they understand the reputation of the police department. I'm very proud of Chief Slaughter and all of the officers that we have, and I hope that they will continue to do the great work that they do. Anyone else for citizens to be heard? Okay. I would ask if there are any consent agenda items 7.1 through 7.10 to be removed by either the council or by citizens. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Move we approve items 7.1 through 7.10.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 8.1.
Approve the City of Clearwater's fiscal year 2022-2023 annual action plan, which is the third action plan of the fiscal year 2020-2021, fiscal year 2024-2025 consolidated plan to implement the goals and objectives set forth in the consolidated plan, and authorize the appropriate officials to enter into agreements with HUD and organizations approved for funding, together with the authorization to execute administrative adjustments to the same as needed.
Thank you. Chuck Lane, Economic Development and Housing Department. 2 years ago, Council approved our 5-year consolidated plan, which establishes the goals and objectives for use of federal funds for housing and community development programs, specifically Community Development Block Grant Program and the Home Investment Partnership Program. We're required to submit an annual action plan for each year of the CON plan outlining our proposed projects and activities for use of those funds. Our plan for next fiscal year will be the third annual action plan in the current 5-year planning cycle. Total funds include the allocations for the current year, prior year funds carrying over, and anticipated program income expected throughout the planned year. Total CDBG funds is $2,896,877. Total home funds available in the planned year is $4,480,489. With CDBG, our focus is on public facility improvements, public services, economic development programs, and limited housing activities primarily benefiting low to moderate income residents. We're planning 7 public facility projects totaling $618,107. 6 of them are with nonprofit partners who provide services ranging from homeless prevention, homeless services, and other community-oriented programs. There is 1 city project to build a new children's playground at Ross Norton Recreation Center. Our plan proposes funding 7 public service providers with services such as family-oriented programs, substance abuse, assistance for the elderly, homeless services, pregnancy resources, and assistance to those with developmental disabilities. Funding is very limited for public services. We're only able to commit 15% of our allocation, which calculates to $134,621. It's very competitive, so we rely on scoring criteria, which calculates to $134,621. It's very those with the highest scores receive the highest allocation, $17,437 each. The second tier each get $15,693, and those in the lowest tier receive $10,462 each in grant funding. We set aside $30,000 for 2 partners to provide homebuyer education counseling to Clearwater homebuyers. We also fund two organizations, $50,000 each, to provide technical assistance to micro-enterprise and small business owners. We use limited amount of CDBG for acquisition and housing rehab. And of course, we're able to use 20% of our allocation towards administration, which primarily funds staff salaries. Home funds are limited to producing and preserving housing units. We have some multifamily housing projects lined up. We also budget for a wide range of housing project types. As I said earlier, we have about $4.48 million in home funding. We anticipate a good portion of that funding to be either spent or encumbered in the current fiscal year, in the coming fiscal year. Lastly, the home program allows us to use 10% of our allocation and 5% of program income for administration. I'll take questions, please.
Any questions for Mr. Lane? Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.1? Have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 8.1.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 8.2.
Declare surplus for the purpose of sale for development of affordable housing real property located at 1408 Monroe Avenue. Approve the real property transfer agreement between the city and Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services, Inc., and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same, together with all other instruments required to effect closing.
Last month, City Council approved a list of city-owned properties that may be suitable for development of affordable housing. There are 2 properties on that list that are vacant lots suitable for a single-family home build. So recently, the city manager approved a procedure for transferring these lots to affordable housing developers of single-family homes. It's a transparent and competitive process for transferring these types of lots. The procedure does not apply to multifamily development sites. We have 3 developers that are on our pre-approved list. Everyone on that list is notified when the city is considering transferring a single-family lot under this program, and we would invite more developers to apply as well. I explained the process to you on Monday. It includes a scoring of applications and recommendations by a small property disposition committee and our Neighborhood and Affordable Housing Advisory Board. Both the committee and the NAHAB recommended transfer of the 1408 Monroe Ave property to Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services.
doing business as Tampa Bay Neighborhood Housing Services. They were one of 2 developers tied for the highest score. The lot is only 36 feet wide, which is a very small lot to try to build a single-family home. Tampa Bay Neighborhood Housing Services is under contract to purchase the adjacent lot, which is going to allow them to combine the lots into one more desirable single-family home lot, and they'll build one home. Staff's value opinion of the lot is $29,900. The contract is a sales price of $7,500. Those funds will be used to fund additional affordable housing efforts. Questions, please?
Any questions for Mr. Lane? Vice Mayor.
I just have one follow-up question, Chuck. As you were reading that for it applies to single-family homes and not multifamily homes. And I asked a question Monday on lots for use with tiny homes, especially Casa and Perk. And I was just wondering, as you read that, would tiny homes be considered multifamily or single-family since they're standalone
Well, if you do a cluster of tiny homes, it would be a multifamily project
on a lot? Okay.
on a
parcel.
Okay, on a parcel. All right. I just wanted to know. So they fall under multifamily.
Yes, if you do a cluster of them, it could be more than one.
Yep. Thanks.
Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.2? Have a motion?
I move to approve agenda item 8.2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 8.3.
Approve the annexation initial future land use map designation of residential low, RL, and initial zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential, LMDR, district for 2843 St. John Drive, and pass ordinances 9580-22, 9581-22, and 9582-22 on first reading.
Good evening, Lauren Matzke, Planning and Development. So this property is occupied by a detached dwelling and is located on the south side of St. John Drive, where it terminates with St. Anthony Drive. The applicants are requesting annexation in order to receive sanitary sewer and solid waste service from the city. Annexation of this property will eliminate an enclave, and staff is recommending approval.
Any questions for Ms. Matzke? Anyone from the public to speak to this item? Mr. Margolis.
Okay, we have 3 ordinances, starting with ordinance number 9580-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, annexing certain real property located on the south side of St. John Drive at the southern terminus of St. Anthony Drive, whose post office address is 2843 St. John Drive, Clearwater, Florida, 33759, into the corporate limits of the city and redefining the boundary lines of the city to include said addition, providing an effective date. Next up is ordinance number 9581-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the future land use element of the comprehensive plan of the city to designate the land use for a certain real property located on the south side of St. John Drive at the southern terminus of St. Anthony Drive, whose post office address is 2843 St. John Drive, Clearwater, Florida, 33759, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as residential low, RL, providing an effective date. And finally, we have ordinance number 9582-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the zoning atlas of the city by zoning certain real property located on the south side of St. John Drive at the southern terminus of St. Anthony Drive, whose post office address is 2483 St. John Drive, Clearwater, Florida, 33759, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as low-medium density residential, LMDR, providing an effective date.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve agenda item 8.3 and pass ordinances 9580-22, 9581-22, and 9582-22 on first reading.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 8.4.
Approve the annexation initial future land use map designation of residential urban RU and initial zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential LMDR district for 1221 Sunset Point Road, and pass ordinances 9583-22, 9584-22, 9585-22 on first reading.
Lauren Matzke again from Planning and Development. So this property is located on the south side of Sunset Point Road, east of Douglas Avenue. The parcel was previously vacant, but will be occupied by a new single-family dwelling that's currently under construction. The applicant is Weekly Homes, and annexation is required in order to receive sanitary sewer, solid waste, water services from the city when the house is completed. Because construction started prior to annexation, that process will need to be complete before the annexation can be finalized. So second reading for these ordinances will be scheduled after the CO is issued. Staff reviewed the plans to ensure consistency with the city's zoning district standards, which would apply upon annexation, and is recommending approval.
Any questions for Ms. Matzke? Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.4? Mr. Margolis?
Starting with ordinance number 9583-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, annexing certain real property located on the south side of Sunset Point Road, approximately 385 feet east of Douglas Avenue, whose post office address is 1221 Sunset Point Road, Clearwater, Florida, 33755, into the corporate limits of the city and redefining the boundary lines of the city to include said addition, providing an effective date. Next up is ordinance number 9584-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the future land use element of the comprehensive plan of the city to designate the land use for certain real property located on the south side of Sunset Point Road, approximately 385 feet east of Douglas Avenue, whose post office address is 1221 Sunset Point Road, Clearwater, Florida, 33755, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as residential urban RU, providing an effective date. Finally, we have ordinance number 9585-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the zoning outlets of the city by zoning certain real property located on the south side of Sunset Point Road, approximately 385 feet east of Douglas Avenue, whose post office address is 1221 Sunset Point Road, Clearwater, Florida, 33755, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as low-medium density residential, LMDR, providing an effective date.
Do I have a motion?
I move to approve item 8.4 and pass ordinances 9583-22, 9584-22, and 9585-22 on first reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 8.5.
Approve the annexation of Shoal Featured Land Use Map designation of residential urban RU and initial zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential LMDR District 1219 Sunset Point Road, and pass ordinances 9588-22, 9586-22, 9587-22, and 9588-22 on first reading.
All right. This is a second property on which Weekly Homes is constructing a new single-family dwelling, and therefore it needs to annex for the same receipt of city services. It's located next to the other parcel to the west, and similarly, Weekly Homes has initiated construction in the county, so second reading will need to be delayed until after a CO is received. Staff has reviewed these plans as well for consistency with the zoning district and is recommending approval.
Any questions? Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.5? Mr. Margolis?
Ordinance number 9586-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, annexing certain real property located on the southeast corner of Sunset Point Road and Sullivan Drive, whose post office address is 1219 Sunset Point Road, Clearwater, Florida, 33755, into the corporate limits of the city and redefining the boundary lines of the city to include said addition, providing an effective date. Next up is ordinance number 9587-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the future land use element of the comprehensive plan of the city to designate the land use for certain real property located on the southeast corner of Sunset Point Road and Sullivan Drive, whose post office address is 1219 Sunset Point Road, Clearwater, Florida, 33755, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as residential urban RU, providing an effective date. And finally, we have ordinance number 9588-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the zoning atlas of the city by zoning certain real property located on the southeast corner of Sunset Point Road and Sullivan Drive, whose post office address is 1219 Sunset Point Road, Clearwater, Florida, 33755, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as low-medium density residential, LMDR, providing an effective date.
Do I have a motion?
Yes, move to approve agenda item 8.5 and pass ordinances 9586-22, 9587-22, and 9588-22 on first reading.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 8.6, and I'm also going to move agenda item up 9.1 up after this because they're companion items and get those over with before we move into 8.7, which I think is going to be a little more lengthy and let staff go home. 8.6.
Approve future land use map amendment from residential office general ROG to institutional I for the property located 905 South Highland Avenue, and pass ordinance 9575-22 on first reading.
Right, so this application addresses a vacant property located on the east side of South Highland Avenue, south of Druid Road. The parcel is owned by the YMCA of the Suncoast Incorporated, and the request is to amend the future land use designation from the residential office general to the institutional category. YMCA has talked with us about constructing a new, smaller facility to replace their current one that is located on the parcel abutting to the south. That has recently been sold to the Learning Independence for Tomorrow School. The Lift School parcel abuts to the south and is designated as institutional, while the remainder of the parcel is wrapped by the Salvation Army's property, which is designated as residential office general. So the requested amendment is consistent with the surrounding area and the future land use designations. Additional details are in the staff report, and we are recommending approval.
Any questions for Ms. Matzke? Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.6? Mr. Margolis.
Ordinance number 9575-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the future land use element of the comprehensive plan of the city to change the land use designation for certain real property located on the east side of South Highland Avenue, approximately 450 feet south of Druid Road, whose post office address is 905 South Highland Avenue, Clearwater, Florida, 33756, from residential office general R/OG to institutional I, providing an effective date.
Do I have a motion?
I move to approve agenda item 8.6 and pass ordinance 9575-22 on first reading.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. We'll go to item 9.1, which I will remind the audience is a quasi-judicial hearing. Ms.
Approve a zoning atlas amendment from the Office O District to the Institutional I District for property located at 905 South Highland Avenue and pass ordinance 9576-22 on first reading.
Right, so this is the companion item to the previous agenda item for the YMCA property. As stated, the request is to change the zoning designation from office to institutional. Staff is recommending approval based on the findings that are detailed in the staff report.
Any questions for Ms. Matzke? Anyone from the public to speak to item 9.1? Have a motion? Mr. Margolis.
Yes, sir.
Can't leave you out.
Ordinance number 9576-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the zoning atlas of the city by rezoning certain real property located on the east side of South Highland Avenue, approximately 450 feet south of Druid Road, whose post office address is 905 South Highland Avenue, Clearwater, Florida, 33756, from Office O to Institutional I, providing an effective date.
Have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 9.1 and pass ordinance 9576-22 on first reading.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 8.7.
Approve a development agreement between the City of Clearwater and Gotham Property Acquisitions LLC and the D'Annunzio Group providing for the redevelopment of two sites on the west side of Osceola Avenue abutting Coachman Park for overnight accommodations, attached dwellings, commercial uses such as retail, food, and beverage, cultural uses, and event space pursuant to the Community Development Code Section 4-606, adopt Resolution 22-15, and authorize appropriate officials to execute same.
Good evening, Gina Clayton, Planning and Development Department. I am happy to be here this evening to present the proposed development agreement between the city and Gotham Property Acquisitions LLC and the D'Annunzio Group for the redevelopment of two city-owned bluff properties. The city has planned for the redevelopment of these properties for many years, and I believe that this project and this team before you can be successful in implementing the city's vision of a revitalized downtown Clearwater. Can we get the PowerPoint up, please? The proposed development agreement governs the former Harborview and City Hall properties consistent with the call for development concepts that was issued earlier this year in May. And you will see references to the main library parking lot are included in the agreement and are on the and is on the location map, as it will provide access to the Harborview site. However, the city will continue to own the lot and provide parking there. The applicant's proposal, represented on the screen, calls for a mix of uses, including apartments to increase the number of full-time residents in downtown, a hotel to bring a steady flow of visitors, and commercial uses such as retail, a variety of food and beverage uses, cultural uses, and event spaces to attract the broader public. This project, along with a newly renovated and expanded Coachman Park, will be catalyst for making downtown Clearwater a vibrant and active place and will bridge the gap that has separated the downtown core from the waterfront for many years. I'd like to now walk you through the details of each of the conceptual plans. The proposal for the 1.34 acre Harborview site includes 2 buildings with parking that is concealed from the building and mostly underground. The north building is a 158 unit hotel that has 13 stories and will be 157 feet in height. And at this time, the specific hotel brand is not known, but amenities will include such things as rooftop pool, business center, fitness room, as well as conference space. Approximately 9,000 square feet of commercial space will be located in the hotel structure on the first and second floors, but they will be operated separately from the hotel. The south building, which is smaller in scale and will not exceed 50 feet in height, which is in line with the retail and townhouse wrap of Water's Edge, will include 12,000 square feet of commercial space, such as retail, restaurant, food and beverage uses, and an event space. The parking garage will have a total of 169 spaces concealed from view to accommodate both code requirements as well as 50 spaces dedicated and reserved and allocated to the city. The density of this hotel will be 124 units per acre, where 95 is allowed. And at the time of site plan approval, they will be making a request to receive units from the Public Amenities Incentive Pool. Their proposed FAR is 0.36 and well within what is allowed by code. As you can see on the site plan, the building on the left is the hotel, and it has a lobby that fronts right on North Osceola, and additionally, there will be commercial space fronting on North Osceola on the street, and a public plaza between the hotel and the commercial building on the right of the screen, which also fronts on Osceola and the Civic Gateway of Coachman Park. Access to the parking garage will be located on the north side of the building, and access will be through the main library parking lot, which you see on the far left side of the screen. The conceptual landscaping plan and Exhibit E of the agreement illustrate that over half an acre of the site will be publicly accessible. Public access is seamlessly provided around the perimeter and through the site interior, and really blurs the line between the public and the private realm. These areas provide a pedestrian area so that people can walk through the site to the park, and provide a lot of outdoor dining and just general public gathering space. As you can see from the elevations, the proposal has a modern urban architectural design that includes a balance of glass, stucco, and wood. A sloped roof cover with grass and seating provides a unique public space between the site and the rooftop of the commercial building, and that provides a very interesting design feature on the park side of the property. The proposal for the City Hall site includes a mixed-use project with a large residential component that includes 2 high-rise towers on a large podium with parking located mostly underground and concealed from grade. This project will have a minimum of 500 units and a maximum of 600 attached dwelling units, along with typical residential amenities. I want to make sure that it's clear that these are apartments for rent and not condominium units. 40,000 square feet of commercial uses such as retail, food and beverages, and cultural uses will also be located at this property. The apartment lobby and amenities such as the commercial space will be all located in the podium of the building. This building will be 27 stories high and will not exceed 289 feet. The project density is 253 units per acre, where 95 is permitted, and that should be 75 permitted, and a FAR at 0.35. At the time of site plan review, this proposal also will require an allocation from the Public Amenities Pool, and that will be decided by the Community Development Board. Parking will be consistent with city code requirements of 1 space per unit, so there will be anywhere between 500 and 600 spaces, depending on the number of units actually constructed. As you can see on the site plan, commercial uses are located on the northeast section of the building closest to South Osceola at the top of your screen. And as you move south towards the intersection, you see that the tower is set back on the south side in order to preserve a couple of trees that are located there. And it gives them an opportunity to provide a vehicular drop-off area and a public plaza abutting South Osceola. The garage entry is located near the southwest corner of the site, and it's concealed from the park's view. And you'll see that there's a raised amenity deck for the residents with a pool overlooking the park. Approximately 1.36 acres of the 2.6 acre site will be dedicated for public use in the way of a plaza that I just mentioned along by the intersection, and then the landscaped retail corridor located on the north side of the property adjacent to the water's edge. This area will provide a lot of outdoor dining space and a connection that goes all the way down into Coachman Park. Landscape terracing with sidewalks and seating are incorporated on the west side of the property, abutting and connecting to the park. And the plan also shows the location of a green roof at the center of the podium, and I did confirm with the applicant that it will be open to residents of the development. As you can see from the elevations, the proposal has a modern coastal design that incorporates the use of glass, steel, and aluminum. The height of the project is generally consistent with the water's edge condominium located to the north, and the overall building mass is mitigated by locating the towers at angles on the podium and creating a large view corridor through the site. Staff believes these projects are consistent with the comprehensive plan, the city's redevelopment plan, and the downtown district standards. Based on the uses proposed, the project creates the needed edge that we so desire to have adjacent to Coachman Park. Almost half of the 3.95 acres will be dedicated publicly accessible space that can be used for gathering, dining, and programming. Based on the number of residential and hotel units, we will have eyes on the park, and the careful designs ensure the scale of development doesn't overwhelm the park. And then lastly, the 2 underground garages protect the park from the visual intrusion of cars and aid in limiting the building height and mass. To make this project successful, the proposed 30-year development agreement sets forth a series of public and private obligations. Before I discuss some of the key points of the agreement, this item was before CDB on Tuesday, and they understood that this was a work in progress, and we had some issues that we talked about that we still needed to work out. Since that time, city staff has been working with the development team, and I'm happy to say that at this point, I think we have resolved some of the outstanding issues. We've reached agreement on the core terms of the document that is presented for your consideration. One item I think that's still hanging out there is Exhibit E. We need to ensure that graphically it portrays what is contained in the language in the development agreement. So what I'd like to do is just highlight some of the key more planning relating items. The agreement will cover all things like uses, densities, intensities, height and parking, and include all the plans that you have seen. One of the provisions that the agreement outlines the fact that there will be some prohibited uses on the site. Self-storage and light assembly and nightclubs, which are allowed in the downtown plan, will not be allowed except for nightclubs inside the hotel. The agreement manages the use of amplified music by establishing decibel levels consistent with what we would consider to be background music. It also requires the ingress and egress to publicly accessible areas to be dedicated to the general public. And from the city's perspective, as we talked about on Monday, a key design consideration for the bluffs is to limit the visual and design implications of required parking. Therefore, the agreement provides for a city contribution to offset the cost of providing underground parking. And since the work session, the developer has committed to designing and constructing the project to achieve LEED Silver certification. A commitment has also been made to make 10% of all spaces EV capable, parking spaces that is, and 5% EV ready. So depending on the number of units that get constructed, which impacts the parking, you would see anywhere between 33 and 38 spaces with EV chargers and another 67 to 77 that would be EV capable. The agreement obligates the city to make the sites ready for development, and as our city manager indicated on Monday, we're well on our way to doing that. The agreement also addresses how the developer and the city will share the costs for designing and constructing the pedestrian bridge for Coachman Park. And then lastly, the agreement lays out a list of conditions that must be completed before the developers can close on the property. And those conditions include you passing the ordinance to amend the charter, the voters passing the charter, approval of a site plan and a preliminary plat, issuance of a building permit for the hotel for Harborview and for the podium and one tower for City Hall, and then payment of all the impact and mobility fees by the CRA. And if those are completed by December 31st, 2024, then we can move forward with the closing, and if not, we can terminate the agreement if you choose to do that. And so before asking if the city manager or city attorney would like to make any additional comments, I would like to confirm that the CDB held the first required public hearing for the development agreement on Tuesday and unanimously recommended approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anything you want to add, Mr. Jennings?
Mayor, the only thing I do want to add is I want to thank city staff, particularly Gina and many other of your staff, as well as engineering, and of course, Mr. Margolis, who has done a remarkable job of pulling all of this together, and your, of course, team as well. So it has been a great team effort. And finally, certainly the development group. I want to thank them for working with us so closely to meet a tight timeline, but I'm very happy that we were able to successfully move this forward.
Mr. Margolis, before I open it up to questions.
No, I agree with the city manager. I mean, this was really not possible without a team effort. As I said on Monday, I'm very thankful to Mr. Millage from my office who's here, very thankful to Ms. Clayton, Ms. Matsky, Ms. Kivett, and everyone else from the operations side. This could not have been possible without everyone working together, including, as Mr. Jennings said, the developer side as well.
Well, it has been great to see it evolve as quickly as it has, and I think a lot of issues have been resolved. I frankly feel very comfortable with the development agreement as it stands, but I want to open it up to questions first, and then we'll go to comments. Councilmember Albritton.
Okay, so just wanted to make a comment first. I just wanted to reiterate the same thing. At least I was, and I know that probably all the council members and the mayor were kept abreast almost daily about the things, and I really appreciate that with staff. It's not something that we're like seeing for the first time tonight or, Monday. We've been all kept abreast of as this thing moved through, and I really appreciated that because I could actually see the progress on both sides, how it all came together, and that meant a lot to me. This is a very important project. It's something we've been looking forward to for a long time, so I'm just grateful that it's coming together as well as it is. My question is this. Are you looking for an approval tonight, or are we going to, I know there's some typos in this that need to be fixed. Are you looking to have the actual approval on August 4th, or what are you looking for from us tonight?
Mr. Margolis.
My recommendation to council is that ultimately the item be continued to August 4th. Ms. Cole and I agreed that it was best to present something that is complete in all material terms so that both the public and council have as much time as possible, as many opportunities as possible to digest it. But we do know that there are a few typos as well as just scrivener error type things to clean up. So for that reason, as well as the fact that the ordinance proposing the referendum question would not be passed on second reading until August 4th, and also there will be an accompanying purchase and sale agreement, or actually two purchase and sale agreements for each of the parcels, which will also be on August 4th. So I think it makes the most sense for all of those reasons for this item ultimately to be voted on August 4th. But the developers team and I agreed that it was best to at least bring it forward tonight so that people have as much time to ask questions, the public can make comments as possible. And so this will effectively give 3 public hearings on the development agreement instead of the 2 that are the requirements of Florida law.
Okay. Other questions? Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I would echo all the accolades to the teams that have been working so hard, and yes, we have been kept abreast, so I appreciate that. I have a couple of questions about the, I have some concerns about the parking and the amount of parking and one-to-one ratios and things like that. When I look at the Harborview site, it's a 158-key hotel with 169 spaces, and 50 are set aside for the library. I'm wondering, is that 24 hours, 7 days a week for the library? I mean, and I know this is sort of in the weeds. I'm not going to get into the weeds about every single thing, but I'm just trying to envision. I think about 50 spaces that are set aside for the library, and how are we going to control those and keep them open for residents or visitors of the library, and that visitors to the park, the retail, or the hotel don't encroach there, because there aren't, as many parking spaces in the hotel as there are rooms. And I get that, not all rooms are filled and people Uber in and all that business, but you also have staff. I mean, you have workers for the retail, workers for the hotel. I'm wondering where they're going to park. And then I thought, well, what if we handed out, if we had resident stickers that people could use at those 50 spaces for the library. And then I thought, okay, but I've got residents who are working in the hotel and or retail, and are they going to be taking up those library spaces? So it's just a little bit of logistics. I'm wondering, is it adequate? And what do we envision there, especially at that Harborview?
Well, first of all, the code requires 0.7 parking spaces per hotel unit, and they meet the code requirement. I think that the operation, I'll probably defer to the city attorney or city manager, but, all of these things that you're talking about will be operationally defined, I think, as we move forward. David may have a more succinct or more defined answer, but these are kind of operational questions.
Does that 0.7 parking ratio, if that's just for a hotel that goes up in the middle of nowhere, do we account for the retail that's on the bottom part as well?
The downtown does not have any parking requirements for retail.
Okay.
When we passed the code in the downtown plan, we adopted a philosophy of looking at parking as infrastructure. So the goal was to have parking throughout this, downtown, so that people actually walk through downtown and not take up precious space on each development site for parking.
Okay. And then I had a question about giving up some of the spaces for parking at the City Hall site as well. So when we first looked at the proposals, the 3 proposals, and decided to begin some discussions with Gotham and D'Annunzio, they had 600 units at the rental with 600 parking spaces, a 1-to-1 ratio. And now they're proposing a minimum of 500 rental units, and then now a 1-to-1 ratio. So we could have parking we could have just 500 parking spaces there instead of 600.
Correct, and you would only have 500 units as well, so that they would be consistent with the code.
Right. And I think, one thing to think about is we're giving up 500 rental units, and we're also, and so the goal is to get foot traffic and activity and energy down there. And so now we're losing 100 rental units, and we're also losing some parking space. And I think one thing I get concerned about with this City Hall rental site is its market rate. And so if we have people who are paying market rate, chances are they may be, two people, not a bunch of studios. And if we have working couples, they very well might have two vehicles. And so I'm just, again, concerned about the amount of parking spaces there. And I do realize that our code is 1-to-1.
Right, and I will say a little bit of the philosophy behind that was that the private sector would decide whether or not they needed more than one. We didn't want to make the requirement too high for our downtown, which we hope to become more urban over the years, and really felt that the development community would make those decisions, along with probably those entities financing such proposals. So that was the position that we took when we did the downtown parking requirements.
Okay.
Well, and we will also be providing other parking throughout the downtown. If there is the need for it, then that will create utilization that then helps to pay for financing of the parking garages. So, I mean, it does go hand in hand. Can I ask a question, though?
Sure.
You said we're losing 500 to 600 rental units. I don't know what that
100,
means.
up to 100. If we thought we might get up to 600, and now we may get, a minimum.
Yeah, it's a minimum of 5
Yeah,
and a max
minimum
of
of 5.
6.
So
Okay.
we may be.
I didn't understand that.
Sorry about that.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yep. And then the green roof, you did confirm that. It'd just be nice to have a photo of what they mean by a green roof, an example, because I think those things can vary a whole bunch.
I'm sure they can address that when they make their...
Just so we know what to expect. And then as far as the Bluff Walk, I know we're going to share in the construction cost. Up to $2 million is what the builder will put in max, even if it goes above 400 or $4 million. I didn't catch, and I may have missed it, but who's responsible for all the maintenance once it's constructed? Is that the city? Yep. Okay.
It's going to be on the city land and a amenity that's an improvement.
I think that's what I have for right now, but I have other things, related to the agreement. Is now the time for that, or you want to wait a minute?
Questions or comments?
Comments.
Okay. Councilmember Tejeda.
I want to echo the comments before. I felt that I was part of the process, and I actually found it very interesting how that process evolved. I also felt that my concerns and my questions were being answered and dealt with continuously. I think the only two things that are left in my mind, at least, was that I would hope that if we do come in at 500 versus 600, that we can actually keep the extra 100 parking spaces. That's just a wish list on my behalf. And then the second thing that I have, which is a big concern, is the timeline. It seems so long. And so I know that the last time we spoke, this question was not answered, and that is, are the two buildings going to be built completely on a different timeline, one completed and then the second? Or is there going to be some overlapping, something to condense the timeline? Because I do believe there are some advantages to the cost of having them built at least overlapping or simultaneously in terms of resources and materials and the cost of building. So those are the two things that remain in my mind a concern.
Now I'm going to open it up to Gotham. They have 5 minutes, and then I will open it up to citizens for comments, and then we will come back around for council comments. Ms. Cole?
Mr. Mayor, I would ask if we might have more than 5 minutes, we wanted to walk through the provisions of the agreement that I think would answer some of the council's questions during that time.
Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yes.
We won't be extraneous. Good evening, Katie Cole with the law firm of Hill Ward Henderson, representing the developer Gotham organization and the D'Annunzio Group. So thank you. I first want to say how thrilled we are here tonight, only a month later, which is somewhat amazing that we are here, as you all have already commented. Happy to have with us tonight Dustin D'Annunzio and Matthew Pickett, representing the ownership group who are the developers. Also here tonight is Jordan Behar with Behar Petrocans, the architects, Keith Grimminger and Frank Domingo with Stantec, and Sean Baraden from Real Building Consultants, who is a sustainability consultant for the project. As Ms. Clayton went through, the development agreement provides for a variety of commitments dealing with the concept plan, and I know you all are familiar with the plan now, so we don't want to spend too much time going through it, but I thought it was important to the process as we get into some of the details of the agreement to have Mr. Behar go through some of the intentions, some of the visions of the plan, and how that translated into the agreement we have before you tonight.
I also want to get the public acquainted with this as best as possible, so this is just another opportunity.
Perfect. So,
Mr. Behar.
Thank you. Good evening. So the city created an RFP with a vision that downtown and the park could be an active destination 7 days and nights a week, a vision that Imagine Park would be seamlessly connected to the urban core and not walled off by private development, a vision that the downtown would become a vibrant place to live, work, and play with active retail corridors, bustling restaurants, sidewalk and parkside dining, and constant pedestrian activity, and a vision that these sites could be a catalyst for so much more. The Bluff's proposal is in alignment with this vision. We designed the sites to enhance the public realm by hiding parking from the street and creating amenities that cater to the entire community. The edges of the buildings are thoughtfully designed and activated to engage their surroundings and embrace the public realm. The street-facing facades are consistent with the downtown development code and reinforce the urban edge. The park-facing facades are more organic and designed for leisurely activity and flow with the park. These buildings are designed to resolve, promote, and celebrate the opportunities that exist at the intersection of this amazing waterfront park and the downtown. The Harborview Center is at the epicenter of the park and downtown. It interfaces with Cleveland Street, Osceola Avenue, and the more active areas of the park, such as the amphitheater. We provided a destination hotel and active commercial uses that include a conference center, restaurant, rooftop bar, event center, and a rooftop beer garden that's accessible via a tilted lawn that feels like an extension of the park. Quickly jump through a couple of these renderings, but here you can see parking is completely hidden. The buildings step up, engage active areas of the park and Osceola Avenue. The hotel's in the background with commercial uses right along the main street corridor. Another view of from the park side, looking at the hotel and seeing the tilted lawn. That takes you up to the top. The roof, the hotel pool deck amenities on the second floor there. And here's a view from that pool amenity, pool deck looking out over the park and over the beer garden roof and towards the water. The former City Hall site is less busy and on a more serene portion of the park. There are large oak trees along Osceola Avenue that are worth preserving, and there's nearby residential. The towers are oriented east-west, shifted and angled to connect with the park, maximize views, and preserve view corridors. The building's divided into two slender towers rather than a single bulky mass, and we soften the building with faceted forms and balconies. The pool amenity area is located at the park side to engage the park and provide daily residential activity. Here you can see the urban pocket park that we've created on the Osceola face, as well as some retail activity and showing the trees being preserved. Again, recognize there's no parking visible from the street or from the park view as well. Horizontal lines and functional clean materials create the aesthetic of the tower. Depth and complexity are accomplished through projected balconies, material contrast, shifting forms, and a clear delineation between the base and the towers above. Glass, stucco, and aluminum work together to form a modern coastal design. From a sustainability standpoint, The agreement commits the team to obtain LEED Silver certification. Additional sustainable amenities include electrical vehicle parking with charger stations and EV-ready spaces, as well as bicycle racks for residents, full-time employees, and visitors to the site. If you have any questions, our sustainability expert, Sean, is here to speak about it. And also, we have Stantec to speak about the parking, traffic, and infrastructure. And really, I just want to close on, again, the intent is to build the vision. The 600 units is ideal, the 158 hotel units are ideal, but these are concept plans at this point. There's a long way to go from here to full working drawings, and there's going to be things that shift and things that we determine along the way. Thanks. Are we able to ask for any extra time?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, Frank Domingo with Stantec. And a lot of talk about parking and traffic. And the whole philosophy that we're approaching is just to focus on mobility as an approach on the user experience, an emphasis on walkability. It really is about how do you create energy in a downtown. It's not with cars, it's with people. It's people's feet walking. It's people's feet walking in through mixed use. So that's what we've designed into this. It's all baked in together, right? You're thinking about the people, and you're linking up the land use with mobility. So the synergies that you get is from the pedestrian first approaches. You're going to hear me say this a couple times. It's about safer walking and slower traffic. Say it again. It's about safer walking and slower traffic. That's what makes downtowns vibrant. So if you take that approach, the benefits you get are people will walk between the uses. They're all, I mean, when you heard the architect speak about how it's laid out, it's deliberate, how it's all laid out, the walking paths to the access to the bluffs, to the park, all the interconnections. That's what makes a downtown vibrant. It reduces overall traffic, but it also creates that opportunity to park once. Park once and use that spot. And why don't you need as many spaces? Because they park once and then they walk to everything else. That's the whole point. You want them to walk through all the corridors. It's not just this one. It's a start. It's not just today. It's what lines up with the future, and that is what we are trying to achieve here. That is what you are trying to achieve here. So the shared parking approach combined with internal capture, again, reduces the the demand on the parking supply and really helps, again, it helps walkability. Our expected results is, we're not focusing on vehicle miles traveled. We're focusing on people accessing the amenities that are there. Some of the key synergies are, the city's already made that first investment in the park. It's the nucleus for it, and then everything else feeds into that. So it becomes a walkable district, less reliant on parking. Again, safer walking, slower driving. And last but not least, I'm getting the hook, I know. So the smart parking approach, y'all already use, I think, use a parking app. But the next level is there are a lot of technologies out there to make that even easier to use, where you can actually get live data as to where the parking is available. So you can park smarter. Use those apps to intercept the parking early on the edges, on the periphery, and actually have them walk all the way through into downtown. And I know.
They'll have questions for you. You're going to have another chance.
Okay. Thank you.
Don't go far.
Thank you. I did want to take the opportunity to walk through the development agreement. I know, as Mr. Margolis said and Ms. Clayton, the Community Development Board, the draft agreement was posted for them, and they reviewed that last weekend and were able to discuss that on Tuesday at their meeting. During that time, Mr. Margolis and I have worked through a number of cleanup issues because candidly there really weren't that many substantive issues there. And I wanted to walk through the agreement in its current form, which was, as far as I know, posted on the agenda, and you all have a comment or a copy of the current version that you reviewed for tonight's meeting and was posted on the public agenda. So with that, there's obviously the general development agreement requirements, similar to what Ms. Clayton went through, that authorizes the development of the properties, recites the purchase and sale agreement and purchase price. It limits the transfers and assignments to qualified transferees, which we can speak about. It does allow the construction of one project to proceed, even if there's a default regarding the other. And that was something that came up on Tuesday at Community Development Board. And candidly, we thought this was an important position for both sides. Mr. Margolis can speak about it. We didn't want to go down a very long path and have the lack of financing, for example, on one portion of the project to kill the entirety of the project and have to start this all over in 2 years. From the developer side, it was very important to ensure from a financing standpoint there was the opportunity to move forward on one or the other without these cross defaults. It does provide the city funding in the amount of $22 million from the city's parking fund to support the parking. It limits amplified sound. The construction activity, which we've all been very sensitive to, is consistent with the city code. There's not currently extraordinary restrictions other than the fact that the city manager does have the authority 4 times a year to give notice and work with the developer to ask. So for example, if during Jazz Holiday or during 4th of July there was a reason for exterior construction to slow or pause, the developer and the city would work together through those requests. It does, to Ms. Beckman's point, set a floor number of units to be constructed. And really, that was something that we wanted to do to ensure the intensity of the developments. We did not want to create a situation where there were fewer number of units than you bargained for constructed. The city was very insistent that they wanted to ensure that the site plans included all of those as well. And so there are provisions in the agreement that allow for the city to claim an immediate default as to the city hall site if a site plan is presented for less than these 500 units. Further, from a building permit standpoint, because candidly, we just simply don't know from a construction standpoint whether the towers are going to be built individually or together. It still is a work in progress. So we provided in the agreement that there is a minimum of 250 units, which will be included on the first building permit, so that you can be assured that eventually there would be no less, presuming the towers are the same size, less than 500. The expectation, as Mr. Behar said, is that the full 600 would be constructed. It's just an opportunity to provide that flexibility. It does provide for the maximum height, density, intensity, and the professional management of the apartments. I did want to just call out the City Hall site. Obviously, Water's Edge is the one tall building around town here on the Bluff area. And so the architect team took great care to ensure that there was not a more significant height at Water's Edge than what is already there. So the approved height of Water's Edge on the development order is 293 feet. This maximum approved height is 289 feet. Again, these are maximums, so the 289 is a max. Once the actual floor plans are laid out and the schematic drawings start coming, we candidly expect that to come down a little bit. But
So that's including the mechanical?
that is not including the mechanical.
Okay.
So,
I would just remind everyone, we have unlimited height in our downtown.
yes,
So.
there is unlimited height, so that was a voluntary restriction there. There is very significant transfer of property restrictions and limiting the change in control. One of the reasons you all chose this development team with Gotham and D'Annunzio is because of the experience that they bring. And the city attorney was very adamant that you want to maintain that experience and know that who you're working with through the duration of construction and once it's open, and then if in the event the project does ever sell, that it is to people of similar ilk. And so that provides for the limits and change in control. Just as a standard provision, the development agreement itself runs with the land. It's a deed restriction. You all included the modification to your code, will be a modification to your code to go from 20 years to 30 years. That agreement runs with the land for that time period. So Mr. Margolis and I spent a lot of time talking about an assignment of the actual agreement, which from a practical matter doesn't really happen unless the property was sold consistent with the transfer of the property provisions. But just as a belt and suspenders, there is a provision that voids any assignment that's inconsistent with the ownership. To recap the closing parameters, and just be very specific, and I did put the section numbers here for reference for you all because I thought that might make it easier. So from the city obligations site, you have this demolition of City Hall, which as Mr. Jennings said on Monday, they've already put out for bid and they hope to see that coming down soon. The environmental remediation of both the Harborview and the City Hall sites in anticipation for construction. Sufficient utility connections, according to your engineering department and the utility surveys, those exist today, but it was very important that once the developer had their building permits, they were ready to come out of the ground. The allocation and payment of impact fees and connection fees by the CRA, which was approved at the CRA meeting on Monday, or the allocation of the dollars was approved on Monday. The public realm improvements, and I will get to this in a moment, but this is something that during our presentation even to you during the RFP we discussed. The intent of this project, as Mr. Behar said, was fully to have an interactive experience. Without construction drawings and without grades and without civil engineering, we don't know where those connections will happen and what will happen with those connections. And so both the developer and the city have an interest in ensuring that those connections are seamless. So the intention of the public realms improvement provision is to show that the city is going to ensure that the area in the park and on the public spaces has the proper grading and connections and meets with the private property, and that the private property publicly accessible spaces connect into the public realm. So there's a back and forth there. City obligation includes the payment of parking contributions at closing, and then also a license to use the main library lot as it's defined in the agreement for access to the Harborview Center. That was another design element in an effort to not have another curb cut on Osceola and limit that vehicular access, as both Mr. Behar and Mr. Domingo said. The hotel is designed for access from the library lot. So we anticipate that that lot will be redesigned somewhat in conjunction with the city, and that there will be parking there. Surface parking will remain for the library, and then the additional 50 spaces in the garage. From the developer standpoint, I appreciate that you think it's a long time, but they will be on the fast track for site plan approval and building permit approval, submittal of construction drawings, obtaining their building permit, and to close by December 31st, 2024. The developer is also committed to pay up to $2 million for the pedestrian bridge or other pedestrian connections that the city feels is appropriate between the north and south bluff walks. I did want to call out the schedule that we have here. There was a lot of discussion about how long it takes to get to a building permit. And much to our kind of construction team's chagrin, I'm sure, we have committed to a very fast schedule. So the referendum in the first week of November, the purchase and sale agreement as drafted now provides for standard due diligence from a real estate standpoint, soil borings, testing, all of the things that you might expect. So once we have a good to go from a real estate standpoint, the development team would do the design and engineering for the site plan submittal. At the latest, to make this deadline, we would need to submit our site plan by April 1st of 2023. Takes approximately 90 days to get through the city process for a non-appealable development order. That development order would include an allocation of the units from the public incentive amenities pool. And so that process through the DRC and CDB would end in June of 2023, at which point the development team could begin their construction drawings. And in a very short time, 18 months, not only complete construction drawings for a $400 million project on 2 sites, but also get the building permits issued. So that's a very long, very fast process. You have a question, Mayor?
No, go ahead.
Okay. The parking commitments, again, I don't want to beat this down up too much, but one of the questions presented at the by the staff prior to the CDB meeting was with respect to the 600 units. And the staff felt strongly that there needed to be more parking in downtown generally. The development team would love to provide a lot of parking at the Harborview site. Right? There's going to be convention space, there's going to be activity. We really would, but we didn't want, but from a development standpoint, did not want to be committed to that. But through negotiations, they did commit, the development team has committed to provide this full 769 spaces, whether they would be located on City Hall or Harborview. So depending on the number of units at City Hall, that would maintain a 1-to-1 ratio. And then if there was a shortage, so for example, if there were not 600 parking spaces constructed at City Hall, the balance of those spaces would need to be constructed at the Harborview, or the developer would refund a pro rata portion of the parking. I do want to highlight that that does include valet spaces, because both projects anticipate some level of shared parking or valet. There are different codes for that in the city, so I just want to call that out. So if there's stacking or other types of creative parking, that would all be included in that 769. I think it's in everyone's interest to have as many cars parked in these parking garages as possible. So this is the draft exhibit that you have in your agreement that you received probably yesterday. This shows what, in an ideal world, if, as you know, Stantec is your park designer and Stantec is our engineer, so in an ideal world, if all of the appropriate connectivity was created and you weren't spending all of this money to open a park next summer only to have construction occur a year and a half or 2 years later, what would happen? But since there is that delay, the staff is and the development team is being very specific to reduce that impact as much as possible. So that's why you don't have a final exhibit yet, because those conversations are still happening. So there's, on this you can see that there was a proposal for additional sidewalks going down toward the amphitheater, ADA access, modifying the bluff walk, just from an elevation standpoint. We don't anticipate that all of that will likely happen or be necessary, and so your engineering department and the development team are working through that now, so the final version will be a much less impact, we believe. There are general commitments to park activity between the city and the developer with respect to the downtown marina, tourist development funding, a typo there, I apologize, and the ferry going back and forth to the beach, all of which this group of developers share your vision of an active park and the connection to the beach and to the rest of downtown. I did just want to echo what your team has already said with the work that's been done and the coordination. This has all happened very fast. Candidly, I think the only remaining business point is that public realm exhibit, absent a direction from you all tonight. Mr. Margolis and I, last night and even this morning, worked on typos and scrivener's errors just to reconcile that. So the agreement that is before you is in substantial conformity with the final agreement, in my opinion, absent that one exhibit. We've worked very hard and well together, and we appreciate that. The team that is put together, and you chose, are experts in development and experts in the market, which I know is one of the reasons why you chose this group. They provided not only a plan that delivers your vision, but this agreement gives the city the protections while providing the developer the provisions necessary to design, finance, and build the vision of yours. So we respectfully request your approval, if not tonight, in 2 weeks, and certainly appreciate all the inputs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. I want to remind everybody, it would be great if we could snap our fingers and have this simultaneously finished with Coachman Park, but that's not how Beach Walk was. Beach Walk was completed, and then we had construction along it. I also want to remind people, and I had the photos of this, or the vision. Originally, Water's Edge was supposed to be the first tower of 2 towers. And for many years, prior to the first tower being built, I had a rendering of both of the towers in my office when I was mayor last go around. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition, but that was always the original vision. So, any additional questions for Ms. Cole or the Gotham D'Annunzio team before I open it up to the public?
I have a question about something you mentioned about the parking. You said you have a number of like 700 and something.
69.
Okay. So minimally, though, it will be a 1-to-1 ratio at the City Hall rental site.
Yes.
And then the possibility for more, and you made a statement that you all hope you can have more parking for retail and park visitors and whatever. If it works out that you're able to have more, are you going to pay for more, or are you going to look for incentives to help pay for more?
I think the financial ask is what the financial ask is.
Okay. So if you're going to build more, it'll be on your dollar? Okay. I do have a question about the section 9.04 change in control provisions. So there's a sentence that says, "The developer shall not sell, transfer, bequeath, or otherwise dispose of the property or any part thereof until the City Hall project or Harborview project, as applicable, is substantially complete in accordance with this development agreement." So what's substantially complete mean? And what? Certificate of occupancy, that's what that means?
It's actually a defined term, and
Oh,
it's
is it in
either
the
a
front? Sorry.
TCO or a CO, but it's a 93% of the units are
Okay.
available for occupancy.
Okay. And can you explain, does Gotham frequently, or do developers frequently sell, transfer, bequeath, or otherwise dispose of the property before that certificate of occupancy?
Neither of these developers do traditionally. However, it's an important provision on behalf of the developers and the owners from a financing standpoint, especially if you consider that these are both, for lack of a better term, family and individual development and investors. And so from an estate planning standpoint, there might be interests of those properties that are moved around. There might be among other investors moved around. So it is a very important flexibility from a practical matter and from a frontward-facing matter. Anything that would happen pursuant to this provision, if there was any type of transfer, would be invisible because you would still have Gotham and D'Annunzio and the key principles.
But the change in control provisions doesn't have a descriptor of qualified transferee. Does it apply up there to 9.04, the qualified transferee, that descriptor under the definitions? Or could they, I'm just wondering, can they sell, transfer, bequeath, 40 or 60% of it, and it doesn't have to be to a qualified transferee?
It provided that they're one or more of the key principles, and prior to substantial I'm looking for.
I see that, yeah.
Yeah.
Third-party investors provided one or more of the key
intention is-
principles, yep.
Right, before substantial completion, you're always going to have these key principles involved. And then it's the qualified transferees that would happen, and so there's a bit more flexibility after completion.
Okay.
So before completion, it's more restrictive than after completion.
You can't get financing without some of these clauses.
That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible.
I know you don't want to take my word for it, but as Mr. McGallis knows, we've been on the phone with a lot of New York attorneys this week.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add on that, Mr. Margolis?
No, not really, other than, I mean, just to speak candidly, I think that, you know, this was a topic that we spent a lot of time discussing, you know, as Ms. Holt just said, you know, crafting the city's interests as well as the developer's interests. And to a large extent, you know, Mayor, as you said, I mean, they are also at the mercy of financing. And so we've worked very hard together and very closely. And I think that what we have come up with here, in my opinion, represents as far as we can push this, or very close to it, without scuttling the deal.
You would never see all these maturations going on if it were a project that did not have public land involved.
Correct.
But out on the beach, when you see these massive projects going on, they have all of the ability to make changes if necessary to make the financing work.
Correct.
It's just, that's the world I somewhat live in, and it's just necessary.
When we were
Otherwise, no one will touch it.
I had one question about time. 9:08, time is of the essence. So just to be real transparent with the public who may be listening, the completion date may be as late as like 2028 of everything?
Right, I think I'll look over, we expect a 4-year construction time period. The hotel would probably be faster than that. But candidly, until we have schematic drawings and work with the contractor, but yes, we do anticipate a 4-year construction time period.
Those are my questions, I think.
Councilmember Albrecht.
Yeah, and just to bring this up, once you get building permits, it's going to be to your advantage to get this thing done as quickly as possible, because you've got financing and, I mean, you're not going to be dragging your feet. I mean, as a retired contractor, once things get moving, you want to get it done as quickly as you can. So I think once we get started on this, I feel pretty comfortable that you're going to want to get it finished.
I'd agree.
Any other questions at this time? All right, I want to open it up to the public for comment. If you'd like to make comment, please come forward. We ask you to state your name for the record, fill out a comment card, and respectfully ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Any takers? Mr. Johnson? I was asked by another speaker never to use his name as he came up to the podium, but I do it with all the people I know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak in support of this project from the standpoint that it's creating that active edge that was in the HRNA Citizens Plan for the park. That was a very critical part of it, and quite frankly, as we were starting the park, I didn't know if we would get that. It really looks like this project will do that. As was mentioned, we want to have an active park for the whole park. And the thing that I have not heard enough about is the active waterfront edge. And if you look at the drawings of the park, how does this?
They'll turn it on.
Just like you see it.
The active
Can you
edge
zoom out? Yeah.
here looks pretty simple. If you look at the Bradenton Riverwalk, it also looks pretty simple, but there are some amenities along here. What I think we want is something that has a lot of activity on that waterfront. And I have yet to see that in the plans. I know there is a working group coming up with programming for that part of the park. And I think in order for the referendum to be as successful as possible, we should have this kind of information for the public in saying, yes, this is part of the project to do an active park where all of the park is active 7 days a week. So I would ask you to try to schedule that in so that we'd be as confident as possible that that referendum will succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else? Well, I know we're not going to vote on this tonight, but, we've been working very closely with Mr. Margolis, as everyone has said. They've kept us up to speed. And, I love Clearwater, otherwise I wouldn't be sitting up here. This is a labor of love for all of us. But I've always yearned for a more vibrant downtown. And it's one of the reasons I ran in the first place. This project really sets the stage for that to occur, along with the city's investment in Imagine Clearwater. And we need to keep the positive momentum going. Downtown Clearwater, unfortunately, for this type of residential product, is not yet a proven market. And I just want citizens really to understand that. And that's why we are participating to an extent. And also through the parking, which I think is one of the best ways that we could do it. The design that has been provided is so far superior to other things we've seen, because keeping the parking underground, and as I said in the paper, it creates view corridors from Osceola that shows you the park, reveals the water, and invites you to come in, basically. Something that we get a lot of complaints about on South Beach, that there's been a canyon effect, that people don't even know the water exists if you're driving down on South Beach towards Sand Key Bridge. We're also doing this through the parking fund, which makes sense. Much of that revenue comes from tourists, and then we are using some CRA money. That CRA money comes from projects that are already in existence in downtown, and it is supposed to be used as a catalyst. When we first started the process, I had some concerns, and I again want to thank staff and the representatives of D'Annunzio and Gotham, because, we needed a critical mass. And so 500 to 600 units plus 158 keys gives us that. We have a 30-year development agreement, which is really critical because it travels with the property. It doesn't matter who the owner is. The criteria set forth lasts for 30 years and frankly can also be extended at some point in the future. We put down very solid criteria for transfer of the property. That's important, obviously, I think, for all of the citizens. Clear time frames for transference of the property should the referendum pass. The groundbreaking and ultimate completion. I think, as Councilmember Albritton said, once you get permits and transfer of ownership has occurred, time is money, and they are going to want to develop this as quickly as possible because you want to start generating revenue. You want to have tenants and you want to have hotel guests. Gotham has agreed to the LEED Silver standard, which was a concession by some council members back when we started the RFP, but everybody agreed on the LEED Silver standard, and I think it's a good thing that we did. I think we've made clear what is the private sector's responsibility, and then what the city's responsibilities are. And then we're partnering on the pedestrian bridge, which originally was something that was value engineered out of Imagine Clearwater. So this is a way that we are actually getting participation from the private sector potentially on that bridge. There's going to be incredible public space. So in other words, citizens of Clearwater are going to continue to have access The difference being that what is envisioned is going to draw people, a place where you want to go, gather, and enjoy time with other people. We've watched these sites be underutilized for literally decades. It's time to partner and help downtown reach its full potential. And I hope the citizens of Clearwater will, frankly, that we learn from some of the mistakes. The 2000 referendum wasn't perfect, but it's a shame it didn't pass. And unfortunately, we've lost 2 decades. I hope we don't repeat that. Other comments? Councilmember Bunker?
Well, first, I throw my voice into the cavalcade of people who've been praising Mr. Margolis for keeping us in the loop so ably, and all your hard work and the staff, and also from the development group. It's pretty remarkable seeing this all come together. I'm very excited for this project. I think this really will break the 47-year curse that Scientology put on our downtown. I think this is going to completely change the entire downtown area for the better. As far as parking, I would not be opposed if we used eminent domain to put parking over at Scientology's apartment or a complex, the Sandcastle, right next to the amphitheater and the park. But we need to solve the parking situation any way we can. But this is terribly exciting.
Councilmember Shea, anything? Vice Mayor?
Yes, so, thank you. I agree with a whole bunch of what you said. I think it can be transformative and it looks lovely, and I appreciate all the work that went into it. One thing I want to communicate is, in speaking for our residents care about the environment. Our residents care about housing. Our residents care about workforce housing in a primarily tourist-driven economy here. When I advocated and asked for 10% set aside for 120% AMI, and I didn't have support, then we don't have support. But I think that there is value in mixed income housing, and I think when we own a public property that we need to model what our values are related to the environment and related to housing. And it breaks my heart that we don't have a set aside for workforce housing, 120% AMI in this, our publicly owned property, and we ask other developers to do it, and we don't model the behavior ourselves for whatever reason. I think of myself as being a parent, and you teach your children not as much as what comes out of your mouth as your actions. And I'm going to let that 120% AMI go because that's a big deal and that was already decided. But it ties in with my ask for environmental and sustainable features on these buildings. Your actions are also putting solar up on those buildings where it's feasible. And for the developer to say they built to LEED standards and they have bike racks, it's my understanding, well, first of all, LEED Silver was part of the application process. So I don't know that I put that down there as a rah-rah. It was part of the requirement. And then the bike, ordinance, bike rack ordinance, don't we already have a bike rack ordinance about certain number of bike racks when we build structures? So you got to do that anyway. And so I think pushing to ask for solar on those buildings is important to set an example at the builder's expense. And the reason I'm doing it up here, I'm going to tell you, where it's not real pleasant, is because I'm not allowed to reach out to the negotiating team. And I do go through Mr. Margolis, and he does communicate that, but there's nothing more forceful than it coming out of my mouth. And I would say that residents who are going to pay market rate at that rental at the Harborview site, the City Hall site, are going to be people with money. They're going to be people who love that view. They're going to be people who are early adopters with EV. If this isn't completed by 2028 and we have major car manufacturers that say they're going to stop production of gas cars by 2030, what do you think those people are going to want? They're going to want EV chargers. Largo and St. Pete require 20% EV ready and a different percentage of, EV capable, 20% EV capable. They already have city ordinances. We're behind on that, and that's bad on us that we don't already have that. But what my fear is if we don't require these developers, who, let me tell you, my limited understanding, it doesn't cost much to lay that infrastructure when you're digging up and pouring cement, to lay the infrastructure for a whole lot more EV ready. But what's going to happen, my fear, is you build those 600 units and, people with income and EVs are there and they're like, man, I can't plug in my car. Come on, city, what are you going to do to incentivize my landlord here to put EVs in here, EV charging, and it'll be back on us, where it's way more expensive. So I want to push for them to do that. It's a minuscule increase in cost, and I think they need to do that, as well as put solar where it's capable on those roofs. I think our citizens have spoken with the landings referendum about they care about the environment. We are on ground zero for climate change right here, especially that location. This is the time to make our behavior match our values, and I think we need to demand that. So that's what I had to say.
Councilmember Albrecht.
Well, I think that we take the $1 million that we would put into affordable housing in this project on the bluff, and we build affordable housing on public land somewhere else, that we can get a lot more bang for our buck on. So that's my comment to your comment. I think it's just the wrong place to put it here, but I think all of us here on the dais are on board with workforce housing somewhere. We've had 3 really good projects. One just kind of bowed out because of construction costs. We're really pushing the CRA money into another project to see if we can help that out. We all understand that it's really important, and it's not something we're letting go on this. But what I really wanted to say was, we are off to such a great start with this. The other referendums that we've been through, we've had some negative, people that were against it that came out in the beginning, and it was hard to get back on top of that. But everybody that I've talked to, at least the people that I'm talking to out there, is on board with this. Everybody's excited about this, and that just makes me feel great, because just like the mayor, the reason that I'm sitting here is because of this project. I wanted to be here to have a say-so in what we have done, we can do with our bluff, because we are a long way behind all our other neighbors and municipalities, because we've languished over here in Clearwater. This is going to pop us right on top again, kind of like what St. Pete did 20 years ago. They were behind everybody else, and then all of a sudden they popped, and now that's the place to go. Well, if we get this thing finished, this is really going to make this whole area change, and I'm excited about that.
Vice Mayor, I want to address the 3 things that you raised. I think, first of all, the affordable there, I think we're all in support of building more workforce housing. But the construction that's going to go here is significantly more expensive than some of the construction that we have seen on other projects with workforce housing. And so inevitably, you're going to be paying a lot more and getting a lot less. So I think the location brings with it issues. As far as the solar goes, did Tammy send you all the pictures that I had sent of the roofs that I saw up in New York?
I didn't get any of that
Okay.
recently.
I think we set silver LEED standards. I've done a little bit of research on it the last couple days. That is a buffet of options to reach that standard. I don't know that it is our place, once that property conveys, to determine what the developer ought to be eating off of that buffet to reach the silver standard. We set the silver standard, they're going to meet the silver standard, but I don't necessarily think we should be dictating to them what that is. I can also tell you, we want this project to be a success. And I can tell you from seeing their project up in New York City, that that rooftop is a huge amenity for the residents. To be able to see, you know, the views that they had there were spectacular, obviously, of the New York skyline. But we have spectacular views as well of Clearwater Beach, Clearwater Bay, and everything else. I think if they want to participate on solar somewhere else within the city as part of the agreement rather than on site, that makes more sense. And on the EV, I still believe it's market driven. I don't think we incentivized gas stations when the automobile was originally created. I think market demands that developers put in the requisite amount of EV because that's what their customers are going to want. And people vote with their feet. They vote with their feet on a daily basis as to who they want to work with, where they want to live, and the amenities that they desire. So I think that they have put in a reasonable amount of EV, and not everybody gets to charge their car at their house. There's going to be charging stations all over. They're being erected. We're going to do an RFP shortly to get charging stations throughout the city on different pieces of property. And I don't necessarily think we're the ones that should be doing it, because I think there's people with more expertise. Councilmember Tejeda.
I can't help but respond to the comment about the affordable housing. I truly believe that we can have different opinions without implying that someone has less or more values or integrity. I think affordable housing is important, but I'm very pragmatic about it. I don't have a specific site in mind as a goal, but rather the end, which is how many people can we help? Having it in a luxury site on waterfront, to me, is not an effective thing. But I care about affordable housing just like everyone else here. And just because I feel that my path may be different, it doesn't mean that my values are lacking. And I just want to be clear on that. I just view it differently, but I value it the same. And I just want to clarify that.
All right, so do we need a motion to continue to August 4th?
Yes, sir.
Who was it? Was it me?
It doesn't matter.
I move that we continue 8.7 till August 4th.
Second.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. All right, we are going to take a 10-minute recess.
90% of
I
the
see, so,
silver,
okay,
designed to
commercial
silver,
first,
certified,
and-
on that, certifying the citizens of Lake Mills.
Matt, I gotta start back up, Matt. Good to see you.
On the same page.
Yep. Sir, you all right? How are you?
Okay. Somebody threw a 10 over this circus. All right, we will call the July 21st, 2022 council meeting back to order. We are on item 8.8.
Council, items 8.8 and 8.9 have been withdrawn.
Okay, any questions for staff on that?
No.
10.1.
Just need to get this back in order. Ordinance number 9564-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, annexing certain real property located on the north side of Sadiva Circle North, approximately 220 feet west of North Betty Lane, whose post office address is 1272 Sadiva Circle North, Clearwater, Florida, 33755, into the corporate limits of the city and redefining the boundary lines of the city to include said addition, providing an effective date.
Anyone from the public to speak to item 10.1? Have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 10.1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 10.2.
Ordinance number 9565-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the future land use element of the comprehensive plan of the city to designate the land use for certain real property located on the north side of Sadiva Circle North, approximately 220 feet west of North Betty Lane, whose post office address is 1272 Sadiva Circle North, Clearwater, Florida, 33755, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as residential urban RU, providing an effective date.
Anyone from the public to speak to item 10.2? Any questions? Motion?
Move to adopt ordinance 9565-22 on third reading.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 10.3.
Ordinance number 9566-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the zoning atlas of the city by zoning certain real property located on the north side of Sadiva Circle North, approximately 220 feet west of North Betty Lane, whose post office address is 1272 Sadiva Circle North, Clearwater, Florida, 33755, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as low-medium density residential, LMDR, providing an effective date.
Anyone from the public to speak to item 10.3? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt ordinance 9566-22 on third reading.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 10.4.
Ordinance number 9589-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the operating budget for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022, to reflect increases and decreases in revenues and expenditures for the general fund, special development fund, special program fund, gas fund, marine fund, and parking fund as provided herein, providing an effective date.
Any questions? Anyone from the public to speak to item 10.4? All in favor? I need a motion.
Move to
Good
approve.
heavens.
Move to adopt ordinance 9589-22 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 10.5.
Ordinance number 9590-22, An ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the capital improvement budget for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022, to reflect an increase of $12,724,924, providing an effective date.
Move to approve, oh, wait, we're supposed to have comments? I don't-
Anyone from the public to speak to this item? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 10.5, adopting ordinances 9590-22 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Passes 4-1 with myself in opposition. That's over the $7.5 million for City Hall. 10.6.
Council, this one is the companion item for the referendum ordinance. The second reading will now be set for August 4th. If a council member can make a motion to continue this to August 4th for second reading.
Anyone from the public to speak to item 10.6? See none. Do I have a motion to continue to August 4th?
I move to continue this to August 4th.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 11.1.
Adopt a tentative millage rate of 5.9550 mils for fiscal year 2022-23. Set public hearing dates on the budget for September 15, 2022 and September 29, 2022 to be held no earlier than 6 p.m. and schedule a special work session on August 4, 2022 at 3 p.m. to fully discuss the proposed budget.
And Ms. Castle, of all the things you want to do on your birthday,
Oh, it's your birthday?
it's not me presenting this, right?
Well, I mean, I think my wish is for a unanimous vote.
There we go.
Touche.
And a fast one.
Yeah. I'm gonna do my best speed reading.
Mr. Jennings, did you have something to add, or was that?
No, actually, I was going to wish her a happy birthday as well.
Okay, well, we'll sing after she's done.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Kayleen Castle, Budget Officer. This first slide is key points that the city manager went over with you on Monday, just giving you the highlights of this budget for fiscal year 23. I'm going to just go into all the nitty-gritty. The fiscal year 22-23 proposed budget for all city operating funds, special revenue funds, and the capital improvement fund is $652,415,095. This reflects a 4% increase from the 21-22 amended total city budget. This slide is a breakdown of that $652 million total by fund type. The general fund budget for fiscal year 23 reflects a 3% increase from the current year's amended budget. The budget for fiscal year 23 includes increases estimated for wage study adjustments, the new FTEs that are proposed, partial year operating expenses for Imagine Clearwater Coachman Park operations, and debt service costs for Imagine bonds. The utility funds total reflects a 6% decrease from fiscal year 22. This is primarily due to decreased funding in capital projects in the water sewer fund. The enterprise funds total is budgeted at a 67% increase over the amended fiscal year 22 budget. This is driven by personnel costs in all funds and increases in the parking fund for interfund chargebacks to support the addition of new officers that are assigned to the beach, and also a transfer of $10.5 million for a downtown parking garage. The budget for internal service funds reflect a 9% increase from the current year's amended budget. This is due to increased insurance expenses in the central insurance fund and increased fuel and debt costs in the fleet fund, and increased salaries and contract expenses in IT. Special revenue funds reflect a 33% increase in comparison to the current year, and this is due to increased penny funding for capital projects in the upcoming year. And the capital improvement fund reflects a 4% increase in comparison to the current year's amended budget. This chart represents the change in taxable property values over the last 11 years. Our 2022 certified values received from the Pinellas County Property Appraiser on July 1st reflect an increase in values of approximately 13.2% from $13.4 billion in 2021 to $15.2 billion. The proposed millage rate of 5.9550 mils is recommended for the fiscal year 22-23 budget. This is the same rate as levied in the current year. Due to value growth, this proposed rate is 11.8% greater than the rolled back rate. The rolled back rate is the millage rate that would provide the city with the same property tax revenues as was received in the prior year. Using the proposed millage rate, property tax revenues are projected to be $86.1 million in fiscal year '23. This represents an increase of approximately $9.3 million or 13% over the fiscal year '22 budget. Of the $86.1 million projected, approximately $82 million will support general fund operations and $4.1 million represents the road millage set aside for the maintenance of city streets. Revenues that support general fund operations reflect a net increase of 3% in comparison to the fiscal year 22 amended revenues. As discussed on the previous slide, ad valorem tax revenues are budgeted at approximately $82 million, which is a 13% increase over the current year. Intergovernmental revenues are projected to increase by 18%. The largest revenue source in this category is sales tax, which is budgeted at an increase of 33% greater than the current year. Our sales tax revenues have rebounded from the COVID years and have showed steady growth over the current year and the prior year, and fiscal year '23 is budgeted based on those trends. The total other revenue category includes building permit fees, fines, interest earnings, and various small miscellaneous revenues. This category is anticipated to increase by 21% in comparison to fiscal year '22 amended revenues, and this is primarily due to building permit revenues and an increase in beach rental revenues. This chart shows general fund revenues by category. Ad valorem taxes is our largest revenue source at 44% of total revenues. Intergovernmental is the next largest at 15.5%. Utility taxes, franchise, and other taxes are the next highest, 9.5% and 10%. General fund expenditures reflect an increase of 3% across all operations in comparison to the current year's amended budget. The 7% increase in the police budget is related to new FTEs, salary and benefit increases, and increases in internal charges related to radio replacements and new vehicles and fleet charges. In the fire department, this 8% increase is related to salary and benefit increases due to the new contract that was approved in the current year, and increases in internal charges for technology and fleet costs. The budget for Parks and Recreation reflects a transfer of 22 positions to the new Public Works Department, which is offset by the addition of 22.8 new FTEs in support of the operations of Imagine Clearwater Coachman Park and the custodial team. The 13% increase in the library is due to salary and benefit increases and increased capital transfers for the main library renovations. For Public Works, the prior year budget represents the current engineering department. For fiscal year '23, this 54% increase is related to the transfer of streets and sidewalks, urban forestry, and the contracts team from Parks and Rec, as well as the addition of new FTEs. The budget for non-departmental reflects a 45% decrease, and this is due to large transfers to capital projects in the current year's amended budget. All other departments, as shown on this slide, include administrative departments, which includes the new Office of Innovation. The 14% increase is primarily related to new FTEs. This pie chart also represents general fund expenditures by department. The budget for public safety is 47.5% of the total general fund budget, with the police department representing 29% and the fire department 18.5% of that total. Parks and Rec is the second actually largest department at 21% of the total general fund budget, and the new Public Works Department is now 7% of total. This chart represents the total general fund budget by category. Personnel costs continue to be our largest expense at 60.5% of total. This is down from 63% of total in the current year due to growth in other categories. Operating expenditures represent the next largest category at approximately 16% of total. Debt and capital expenditures have shown growth in the current year, and this is due to the inclusion of the budget for Imagine Clearwater bonds. A total of 1,882.5 full-time equivalent positions are proposed across all funds for fiscal year '23. This is an increase of 33.8 positions from the current year's amended budget. In this graph, the sand-colored portion represents general fund FTEs, which are budgeted at 1,158.4 positions, This is an increase of 44.5 from the current year's amended budget. In comparison, the green portion represents all other funds, which are budgeted at 724.1 FTEs for fiscal year 23. This is a decrease of 10.7 from the current year. These next two slides list the FTE changes that are proposed in this current budget. They are represented by category. The first category, accountability, includes a total of 8 positions that are added to enhance the financial, operational, or managerial accountability of the city. For the general fund, this includes an auditor, an internal audit, a payroll technician for the fire department, and in planning, a development review planner and a building plans examiner. In the administrative services fund, 3 positions are added: a network analyst, senior systems programmer, and a senior business systems analyst. An assistant manager is added for additional field supervision at the marina. The operational efficiency category represents new initiatives and department reorganizations as requested by the city manager. A total of 16 FTEs are being requested in the general fund. The Office of Innovation Department is being created with the addition of a chief innovation officer, a sustainability specialist, and 3 neighborhood coordinators, which will accompany 2.7 existing positions transferred from the city manager's office. A new Public Works Department is established with the addition of a Public Works Director and 6 positions to create a right-of-way maintenance team. This new staff, along with 50 positions from engineering and 22 positions from Parks and Rec, will operate the general fund portions of Public Works. A Human Resources Manager and Human Resources Analyst are added to HR to enhance citywide training. In the Clerk's office, we are adding a grant coordinator, and in Economic Development, a Senior Real Estate Coordinator. In support of new capital investments completed in the current year, 18.8 positions are added in Parks and Recreation to create programming and provide for maintenance and beautification of the downtown core, which represents Imagine Clearwater through down Cleveland Streetscape through Crest Lake Park. Our last category represents additional staff proposed in relation to new or enhanced levels of services provided, many of which are based upon requests from the community. In the general fund, a total of 16.7 positions are added, which includes a librarian and part-time library assistant to staff opening the North Greenwood Branch Library on Saturdays and an earlier opening time on Fridays. In Parks and Recreation, 4 FTEs are added to create a custodial team, which will assist with the reopening of several park restrooms. And the addition of 10 police officers are proposed to support increased service demands related to development and tourism on Clearwater Beach. Also in the police department, 1.2 FTEs are added for variable police aid hours, which will provide additional staffing at the causeway on holiday and peak periods. Level of service increases for other operating funds, total 3.3 FTEs. This includes the addition of a marina parking supervisor, who will supervise staff at both marinas and the air park, an additional parking facility aide at the beach marina, and an increase of half an FTE to upgrade an existing part-time position, which will staff peak operating hours at the fuel dock. In the parking fund, an increase of 0.2 for a parking attendant, FTE upgrade for a current part-time to full-time position. In Parks and Recreation, the addition of a part-time recreation leader will support summer and after-school programs funded by the Juvenile Welfare Board. These new requests total 62.8 FTEs, 55.5 in the general fund, and 7.3 positions to support other operating funds. In an effort to identify opportunities for right-sizing the organization and looking for solutions to be conservative with this growth in positions, we've identified 29 positions that are being eliminated due to the inability to staff them for more than 1 year. The total on at this line on the slide also includes positions being moved between operating funds. This reduction in reclass of position results in a net increase of 33.8 FTEs being proposed for fiscal year 23. This slide represents the categorical breakdown of the capital improvement fund budget for fiscal year 23. Funding for projects for our utility funds are budgeted at $55.8 million. This continues to be our largest expense at approximately 44% of the total capital improvement budget. General government projects are estimated at $32.4 million, which represents 26% of total capital funding. This includes projects for police, fire, streets, sidewalks, parks and recreation facilities, libraries, and the maintenance of city buildings, that operate general government functions. Significant changes proposed in general government projects include additional funding of $900,000 of general fund revenues in the Streets and Sidewalks project, an increase of $3 million to fund Long Center renovations, and $575,000 for main library renovations. Projects in support of internal service operations are budgeted at $12.7 million, or 10% of total capital funding. Significant changes in internal services are approximately $5 million for garage purchase and replacement projects, and this is related to increases in prices, as well as the addition of new vehicles and equipment to support new FTEs, facilities, and programs. The capital budget for small enterprise funds is proposed at $24.6 million. Significant changes to these projects include penny funding of $11.5 million for the Beach Marina upgrade project and $10.5 million for the downtown parking garage. We've scheduled a special work session as an opportunity for you to further discuss the proposed budget with all departments represented. This will be held on Thursday, August 4th at 3 p.m. And any specific topics that you'd like to discuss, please let the city manager know as soon as possible so we can prepare any backup documentation. The action requested of you tonight is to set the tentative millage rate, which the city manager has proposed at 5.955 mils, and to set the 2 public hearing dates for September. This information is provided to the county for inclusion in trim notices, which will be mailed to our residents in August. Just to note, if you set the tentative millage rate at the proposed 5.955 mils, it can be reduced in September, but cannot go higher without a first-class mailing to all of our residents at our expense. Our first public hearing is planned as part of the council meeting on Thursday, September 15th, and our second hearing to adopt the budget will be a special council meeting scheduled for Thursday, September 29th. Both of these meetings are scheduled to begin at 6 p.m. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
My hope tonight is that we're just going to set the millage, not get into the nitty-gritty, wait until the 4th. I'll be forwarding you a bunch of questions, Mr. Jennings, as I'm sure the rest of the council will. Any questions for Ms. Castle this evening? Anyone from the public to speak to item 11.1? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 11.1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. There's
Happy
your birthday wish.
Kaylee.
Pretty weak wish. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kaylee. Happy birthday to you.
She's so red.
Yes.
There you go.
None of us will quit our day jobs except for Councilmember Bunger.
Yeah.
All right, 11.2.
Amend Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Article 6, Division 3, Purchasing, revising Section 2.542, Section 2.554, Section 2.561, and Section 2.563 in Division 4, Disposal, Disposition of Surplus Tangible Personal Property, revising Section 2.623, and pass Ordinance 9596-22 on first reading.
Thank you, Rosemary. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Jay Ravens, Finance Director. This item is a request to approve amendments to the purchasing and the disposal of surplus sections of the Code of Ordinances. A requested change includes updating the minimum purchase threshold for competitive quotes from the current level of $2,500 to $10,000. The $2,500 amount was established in 2001. In light of rising costs and supply shortages, we are recommending the $10,000 level to help expedite efficient procurement for departments citywide. Similarly, the city manager's authorization level for disposal of surplus assets has been capped at $5,000 for more than 20 years. We are requesting this level be increased to $50,000. Dispositions in excess of $50,000 will continue to be brought to council for approval. Other minor changes include updating the requirements for performance and payment bonds to mirror state statute and the city's current purchasing policy, clarification that contracts for commodities should not normally exceed 5 years, and other minor non-substantive updates to ordinance terminology. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Ravens? Anyone from the public to speak to item 11.2? I have a motion.
Move to approve item 11.2.
Second.
Mr. Margolis. I know, I got you.
Ordinance number 9596-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Article 6, Division 3, Purchasing, amending Section 2.542 to change definitions, amending Section 2.554 to increase approval authority for department directors, to clarify contract requirements, amending 2.561 to clarify performance and payment bond requirements, to change small purchase monetary threshold, amending Section 2.563 to increase micro purchase monetary threshold, amending Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Article 6, Division 4, Disposal and Disposition of Surplus Tangible Personal Property, amending Section 2.623 to increase disposal authority for surplus sales officer, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 11.3.
Authorize the Marine and Aviation Director to apply for and administer the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission Sport Fishing Restoration Florida Boating Infrastructure Grants on behalf of the City of Clearwater for Capital Improvements Project C-1905 Clearwater Beach Marina, and adopt Resolution 22-16.
Mayor, Council, Eric Gandy, Marine and Aviation Director. The Beach Marina project may benefit from some FWSC, or Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission administered grants. Part of any grant application process requires the council to adopt a resolution authorizing me to apply for the grant and demonstrating a commitment to comply with the grant for a period of 20 years.
Any questions for Mr. Gandy? Anyone from the public to speak to item 11.3? Mr. Margolis.
Resolution number 22-16, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearwater, Florida, authorizing the Marine and Aviation Department Director to apply for and administer the Sportfish Restoration Florida Boating Infrastructure Grants on behalf of the City of Clearwater, the governing body, providing an effective date.
Have a motion.
Motion to approve agenda item number 11.3.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 12.1. Thank you, Mr. Gandy.
Call for an election on November 8, 2022, to present a referendum question to the city electors amending the charter of the city to allow the redevelopment and sale of two certain unoccupied properties in the downtown core and pass ordinance 9597-22 on first reading.
Mayor, this is the language that council had previously agreed to when it comes to proposing the ordinance that will go to voters. This ordinance includes both the 75-word explanatory statement along with the 15-word ballot title that will appear on the ballot itself. In addition to that, this ordinance includes actual changes to the charter, which are summarized in the 75-word explanatory statement approved by council. So since council approved the language during the last meeting, we are now here formally for council to approve on first reading the language that you approved last meeting. If this passes this evening, then we will reconvene on August 4th for this to pass on second reading. Assuming council would like this to go forward in November, this is a must-pass item in its current form.
Any questions?
I have one question.
Yes.
It must pass in its current form. I was just wondering about that word entertainment in our discussion we had before. We okay with entertainment there? It doesn't, just wanted to make sure we were okay with entertainment because there was that discussion.
I think we need to be fine with it now.
I would,
Approve it today.
I would be very hesitant to make any material changes at this point, given the prior discussion.
Okay.
And the timeline to submit this to me.
Yeah, I know. I mean, just, okay. I'll make a motion to approve agenda item 12.1.
Second. Sorry.
That's okay.
I have a motion and a second. Is there anyone from the public to speak to this item? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
We have to.
I'm sorry. I'm ready to go.
It's like a carve-out.
Hobson's four.
And in fairness, we have spent a lot of time with this title already, so. Ordinance number 9597-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, calling for an election to be held on November 8th, 2022, submitting to the city electors a proposed amendment to the city charter to allow the city to negotiate the redevelopment and sale of certain unoccupied downtown property in the downtown core for the purpose of creating a vibrant, mixed-use development consisting of apartments, hotel, and commercial space, including restaurant dining, cafes, and event space, activating the area adjacent to Coachman Park.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Anything else, Mr. Margolis?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jennings, anything? Okay. Closing comments. I'll start from my right.
I think I've said enough for tonight. The only comment that I really say is that we're so close to having one of the big things that I was excited about being here actually happen. So I guess on August 4th that we'll take the vote and things will proceed. So hopefully in November we'll have a referendum that'll pass.
A lot of work to be done between now and then. Vice Mayor?
Well, I wanted to say thank you again to all the people involved in the negotiations, the developers and the staff on our side. I know you all have been working night and day, so I appreciate that, and I appreciate discussing the development agreement and helping to give feedback. And I guess the last thing I would say is that we have an August 23rd primary election coming up. The last day to register to vote for that election is Monday, the 25th. So check your voter registration, get registered to vote. You can request a mail ballot, but that's the last day to vote, to sign up to vote for the August primary. So please do that before the end of the day, Monday.
I'm going to say a simple good night.
I want to reiterate, at first I was kind of like wondering how this process was going to be, but the staff has made me comfortable throughout the whole process, and I felt I was well informed, and I appreciate the amount of work that everyone has put in. And then I just want to end up with a positive note. I have been really impressed with Parks and Rec, especially with Ross Norton's programming and Greenwood. They've been really doing great work with their youth programming. We attended the Cops and Kids basketball game, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And then yesterday, there was another event at Long Center, again tomorrow at Greenwood. The staff is working so hard, and it's really reflecting well on the youth there. And so I just wanted to give some kudos to them.
Yes, we haven't had a meeting in a while, so I do want to thank our Parks and Rec staff and the community for the first Juneteenth celebration. It was hot, but they did a really nice job with it. Had an opportunity to talk to the Habitat for Humanity Board and really reiterate our commitment to partnering with them. It has been a great partnership. They had the mayor of St. Pete and Largo and myself come out and talk to them. I want to thank the Phillies and our staff also for a great 4th of July celebration out at Baycare Ballpark, and as great as it was, I'm looking forward to going back to Coachman Park. Chi-Chi has, Rodriguez Driving Range has started a really cool power tees program. You don't even have to tee your ball up. The Vice Mayor and I were out there, saw this young man hitting some golf balls. It was pretty phenomenal. There was a fundraiser last weekend at the Sailing Center. They did raise a lot of money. I want to thank all the volunteers for that. I want to thank JWB. They had their book tour where they went to our rec centers and several different neighborhoods and gave away 2 books to all of our youngsters. As the Vice Mayor said, I think a lot of us have gone on tours with CMA for the sea turtle nesting. And we just want to make sure people stay away from those nests, respect those, and we also do need to talk about the lights at some point because we need to set the example, and clearly the lifeguard station is not one of the best, and we've got some other parking areas and some overhead lights that need to be addressed. The Kids versus Cops was great. Deputy Chief, thank you. He was out there playing ball with the kids. They can run and run and run, can't they? One who also just mentioned the passing of Nick Pappas, who was, a really great philanthropist in our community, was the owner of Young's Barbecue that became Rumba. Wonderful family and a really sad passing at the young age of 62. Want to congratulate 4 Eagle Scouts from Troop 484, Stephen Asari, Colin Carpenter, Jude Palma, Nicholas Silvestro, and Hunter Herr. We're going to try to have them at the next meeting. And then thanks again to our entire staff for everything that you have been doing with the referendum and with the development agreement, purchase agreement. It's a lot of work in a short period of time, but I think you've done extraordinary work. And with that, we are adjourned. God bless.